There is one big misunderstanding about how people run into a burnout. A burnout does not occur because you work so much. That's not the reason. Before I tell the true reason why people run into burnouts, let's delve into what work actually is. Work is not only doing your jobs. In fact, people work all the time in sense of being active in some sort of way. Even when we sleep, our body is working. It's growing, it's digesting, regenerating, which is also a form of work for the our brains are working while we are asleep, processing our experiences through dreams and still subconsciously controlling all body functions. Sometimes there is more brain activity while we sleep when we are awake. So when we are awake, our brains are basically working all the time and our body as well. Whatever we do, no matter what it is, as long as we take any physical or mental action, it's a form of work. Our brain is designed to constantly process information and do the work. Our bodies are constantly moving. Even when we sit still at our desk, our body is doing something. Basically, every creature on this planet is designed to live and work all the time. Our brains are designed to think. That's why it's so difficult to think of nothing when we try to sleep or meditate. So, what is it that causes a burnout? It is not working per se. People don't get burnouts because they work so much. They get a burnout because they are constantly doing something they hate in a monotonous fashion without receiving a proper reward for the work. That's the bitter truth. I repeat, people don't get a burnout because they work so much. It's because the work that they do is boring and they hate it. And this is what makes them feel depressed. And that's why they run into burnouts. So now the story of my burnout. Before I become self-employed, I used to work in an office days a week, 8 hours a day. I ended up in my burnout at the age of 36. My day would start with my morning routine, having coffee, going to the bathroom, getting dressed, and choking down some breakfast when I wasn't even hungry. Sometimes I would skip breakfast and have something to eat on the way to work. Sounds familiar? I guess this is how most people kickstart their day. So, pretty much everything I did before I left the house to go to work, I did because I had to in the fastest way possible. So, I had as much sleep time as possible without getting late. And I was in public transport for about an hour. Public transport in the morning rush hour can be extremely exhausting and depressing. Constantly busy, not running into other people, trying to get a seat, while checking the phone for something interesting enough to distract myself from where I actually was. In the morning, zombie crowd. Same thing. After work, 1 hour back home. People did not look that depressed, but they looked even more tired. And the actual work, 8 hours of work with 1 hour of lunch break, if even. Once I had a job where people would actually have the lunch breaks on their desks, so they would eat in front of the computer screens. Certainly not something that's worth the term break. After finishing my day at the office, another hour back home, as I said. And then finally, like my spare time, like 2 or 3 hours. So I would go to the gym, or I would be so hungry I couldn't go to the gym and prepare my dinner and do all the necessary routines like the laundry, which is also a form of work, and all that shit. So when I was in that hamster wheel of this office world for a couple of years, I mean, I liked my job at the beginning, but it got pretty boring. And as I said, it was not rewarding. I was thinking a lot about the time back in the good days when I was a student. I worked at least as much, but life was just so much better. What did I do back then? I was studying at two universities at the same time. and had an office job 2 days a week. Later, I would work as a freelance photographer for art galleries, as my job in the architect's office was paid so badly I couldn't afford life anymore. At the weekends, I would go to a party, but not before midnight, excuse me, because I spent the evenings at home studying. On Sundays, I was visiting my parents for lunch. Afterwards, I had a 5 or 6 hour band rehearsal. So I basically did 60 hours of work every week. And it wasn't a really problem. And sometimes it was hard, sometimes it was exhausting, but I loved it because I did so many things. And most of the things I did, I loved, I felt passionate about. So again, it's not the amount of work that makes you feel depressed, sick, burned out. It's the monotonous fashion and the missing rewards that makes it depressing. I hardly ever got paid appropriately when I was an employee. I watched my bosses become richer and richer, but I stayed poor and made hardly enough to make my lower middle class living as an architectural engineer, while 20-year-old waitresses made twice as much money as I did. And that's the problem with jobs. You know what job stands for? JOB stands for just over broke. And in my JOB, I had no other choice than being with the same people every day in the same room at the same computer, doing more or less the same thing. After I had my burnout, it took me about 2 years to get back on track. In these 2 years, I studied spatial management and transmedial arts, and I founded my own company. I started with pottery, and I made hundreds of vessels and bowls and plates and sculptures. Then I adopted a Spanish greyhound, and later on, I got a lecturer position at a university. I co-founded a nature protection association, and I started this YouTube channel. I sort of have like 4 or 5 jobs now, and I love it. There's always something new. New people, new challenges, new stuff to learn, new stuff to like nerd into. And I'm all doing it because I choose to, not because my boss tells me to do it. It's a different feeling. My life is not easier than when I was working 9 to 5 in the office, but it's more interesting and it's more like back in the good days. So I make as about twice as much money as I did as an employee, but I work only half the time, so it's same. But I can still choose to work more. Um, but what I have is I have the freedom, like to take my dog to the lake on a Monday morning to go for a swim in summer, while most other people just watch the summer sun from inside their office buildings. I'm still in some sort of a hamster wheel, but it's just that my hamster wheel is bigger and more comfortable. So if you feel close to a burnout and you are already suffering from depression, whatever it is that you're doing, do something else before it's too late. Burnout and depression are not nice things to experience. It steals your time. In my case, it was also necessary to achieve the lifestyle that I have now. Sometimes it needs to get worse before it can get better. That's it for today. Remember to like the video to help with the algorithm, and you might also write something in the comments. What's your experience? And if you want to see me again, please subscribe to the channel. So have a nice one.